Hello, New Zealand. Welcome to Political Playback. And it's a little bit different tonight because we have got a special panelist, and it's a very special welcome to Rodney Hyde, one of my best mates down in Queenstown. How are you, Rodney?
So admire you.
Oh, there we are.
Deeply
Sorry,
admire you.
I
I've
forgot
admired
to
you.
turn on the audio just to show how control I am. So I'll just do that again. How are you, Rodney?
I'm very well, and it's nice to hear you say that I'm a good friend because I've admired you for decades.
Oh, well, it goes both ways. So we're feeling the
Thank you.
love. Now, a few technical difficulties, so we're glad to be live on air. I am just getting comments through YouTube. So if you want, are you desperate to give us some feedback on YouTube, go to our YouTube account, watch it there, and I'll be able to see some of your comments go back. And yeah, but sorry about the Facebook, just few technical issues there. Right, Rodney, we have got so much to discuss. Just to clarify, everybody, if you think that Simon O'Connor has suddenly lost all his hair, no, it's he's overseas in Ireland at the moment, celebrated his birthday yesterday in Tipperary, of all places, long way to Tipperary. And so Rodney Hyde is sitting in for us. So actually, Rodney, let's just get straight into it. And this is the announcement that actually came out today. And it's about the fact that they want us to leave politicians in place for 4 years rather than 3. This is what the government announced today.
The government has agreed to introduce legislation to potentially allow for a referendum on a 4-year term for Parliament, and we'll be introducing a bill very shortly into Parliament and then sending it off to Select Committee. Now, this is a discussion that we've had as a country several times before, and basically the arguments for a 4-year term are that it gives governments a longer time to develop and progress an agenda, and less chopping and changing, which is one of the downsides of frequent elections. Some people will argue that the first year of a government takes a lot of organisation, and then the third year is you're looking forward to an election, and really that middle year is the best year to get things done. And so a 4-year term would potentially double that period. The arguments against it have always consistently been that New Zealand doesn't have an upper house, doesn't have a Supreme Court that strikes down legislation, and so a more regular election is justified on that basis. Also, part of the coalition agreement was that we would introduce a bill drafted by the ACT Party, and so what that does is effectively say that a parliament or a government can have a 4-year term, but in order to do that, it has to arrange the select committees in a different way, which makes it stronger for the opposition to hold the government into account. So,
All right, Rodney, I'm really fascinated to hear what you think about this 4-year term, and does the arrangement around select committees reassure you?
No, not at all. I'm against a 4-year term in principle, always have been. And I'm against this particular bill because it's neither fish nor fowl. Let me explain a 4-year term, first of all, why I oppose it. There's a great saying in New Zealand politics that we have, which is that a 3-year term is too short for good government and too long for a bad government. But here's the thing. We've always voted good governments back. So effectively, a new government gets 8 years, and ever so often, really 12. So it falls over on the face of it. And when you're in government, preparing for an election isn't that big a deal. So I don't see the logic of going for a 4-year term. But here's the crazy thing. I checked out the ACT bill. It's unbelievable. It doesn't specify that New Zealand will have a 4-year term. It specifies that New Zealand will have a 3-year term unless the Prime Minister tells the Governor-General he or she would like 4 years.
What?
We're going to head into an election not knowing whether we're getting a 3 or a 4-year term. Everything's going to be thrown out of kilter.
Yeah.
And for the Prime Minister to tell the Governor-General that they'd like a 4-year term They have to consult the Speaker and the Leader of the Opposition, I can't remember who else, and throw the control of the select committees over to the opposition, or yes, over to the opposition. So effectively, at present, select committees are proportionate according to the makeup of Parliament. What this legislation does will make the select committees proportionate to the makeup of Parliament if you want the 4-year term, minus the executive. So you take out 20 of your MPs, which means that you'd now have a situation that if Chris Luxon had opted for the 4-year term, it would be the Greens, the Maori Party and Labour that would control every select committee. Now, no Prime Minister or potential government that knows anything about the operation of Parliament would agree to that.
No.
Because our select committees are extremely powerful, right? And it'd become a joke. So, for example, any select committee on its own can decide to have an inquiry. And that inquiry has the full force of Parliament. So every select committee being controlled by the opposition would have multiple inquiries underway, with ministers dragged before them to be questioned. Now, in many ways, that would be a good thing. But we know the way our Parliament works, it wouldn't be an inquiry on behalf of the people of New Zealand. It'd be an inquiry on behalf of the opposition to try and score points.
Yep.
Second thing, a select committee can rewrite all the legislation that comes before it. So every government bill that the select committee opposes would be rewritten and then get sent back to Parliament, making actually a joke of the select committee process.
Yeah.
No Prime Minister would agree to a 4-year term because, yeah, you gain a year, but you lose power. Now, I'm a big believer in getting the select committee sorted out so that they can do their job. But I hate the gamesmanship that has developed in our Parliament, where it's a game between the opposition, who's ever in government, played it for 15 years myself. But now that I'm out and I look back on it, no, we want a Parliament working for us, the people. This won't do it.
Well, I mean, I've been to select committees where it's just been a complete farce, and that's when the government has controlled it. I mean, anybody who's made a submission to the abortion bill or euthanasia or conversion therapy bill will know just how farcical the select committee process is. And so for the likes of Labour and Greens and Te Pāti Māori to be able to dominate it, that should send the shivers down everyone's spine. I was interested,
Just
Rodney,
tell me, Bob, just tell me quickly, you've gone before select committees for many, many years. Have you noticed it getting worse?
Oh, without a doubt.
It
Yeah,
has,
I've noticed
hasn't it?
more hostility. They seem to be a law unto themselves as to what submissions they're going to allow. They do it very speedily. They announce for submissions to be due over the holidays. So you find that a lot of deadlines are over January when everybody is on holiday. It's quite a cynical approach. I just don't think democracy is strong in our select committee process. So I wouldn't trust it. I'm totally against a 4-year term, Rodney,
Me too.
because until we have a upper house and until we have binding citizens initiated referendums and until we have some kind of accountability. I mean, we could have had 8 years of Jacinda Ardern's government. That should make everyone vote no. But I was just going to show you the latest polling. So this is from Horizon Research. This was done in January. 40% would say yes for 4 years, 30% would say no, and 30% haven't figured it out yet. So I sure hope that we can have a decent debate around this issue. But based on what you said, Rodney, National should be the last people supporting this proposal.
Well, I doubt that it'll go ahead. Because don't forget that if it goes ahead, there's a referendum. And a referendum just becomes as a huge distraction then to the next election.
Yeah.
So I can't see National supporting this, and there's plenty of reason to oppose it. And I understand the agreement is for it to only go to select committee. But it's not the 4-year term that you expect. It's up to the Prime Minister, and it's up to the Prime Minister handing the select committees over to the opposition.
Okay, the other big news that happened today, which was sort of minor, but it was kind of funny, and we did have a couple of texts laughing about it, is that TVNZ and One News have decided to get off Twitter, X. Now, we know that it's because Elon Musk owns it, and he doesn't own Facebook, so they'll stay on Facebook because Mark Zuckerberg isn't quite a Trump supporter as Musk is. But they say it's because it's notoriously toxic social media website. Although the interesting thing was that when I had a look at their account on Twitter, they've got 308,000 followers. So for them to say that there was little engagement is just a complete lie and an excuse. Rodney, I know that you're a big fan now of X. It's your go-to for news source, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. I love X. I so love X. In fact, I've got a problem. I'm addicted to X. Like, I'll go, obviously, catch up in the morning, and then I'll go out and I'll be doing odd jobs, and I feel the need to rush in and check X to see what's happening because I get everything in real time.
Yeah.
And I get everything from the horse's mouth.
Mm.
And I follow the best journalists in the world. I love X. And to me, it's entirely replaced the media. And I find myself skipping over the Herald and the stuff, and the news that they're interested in, it's days old compared to what happened in X. My only problem is I find it very hard to talk with someone about politics or what's happening in the world if they're not on X because they're so far behind. And also they're getting their news, to me, biased. And how am I so sure that mine's not biased? Well, mine's not biased because I'm hearing it from the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
Also this, I noticed no toxicity on X. I don't post. I imagine if I posted, I'd get trolls attacking me. But I find X excellent. The fact that TV is saying, or TV New Zealand is saying it's toxic, just shows you that they don't like the feedback. The feedback is ordinary New Zealanders, and obviously, if you're like me and have 101 reasons to criticise every news article that TVNZ posts, I will be posting and explaining why they're wrong and why they're useless. That's the toxicity. The toxicity to TVNZ is that X provides ordinary New Zealanders a voice and forces TVNZ to be accountable to them, and they don't like it. And why is Facebook okay? Because it's so heavily moderated, it's basically the playground of lefties.
Well, the interesting thing is that TVNZ, New Zealand Herald, News Talk ZB, they're often turning off comments on Facebook and won't allow people to comment. In fact,
really?
Was it the Centrist or the Facts.nz actually caught the New Zealand Herald out when the comments were going against them? They actually deleted all the comments, and it was specifically around the Treaty Principles Bill. So, they talk about toxicity, but in fact, the toxicity, like I say, they got 300,000. Why don't they engage with them? But this is kind of a Trump derangement syndrome, anti-Musk.
Of course.
Thing.
Of course. And Musk has gone from a hero to the left to an enemy of the left, who they talk viciously about simply because he's supporting President Trump and cutting government waste. The other thing I love about X is community notes.
Yeah.
So very quickly, if something's wrong in a post, it gets corrected by citizen journalists and citizen commentators. TVNZ could learn a lot from citizen notes. And I noticed that Mark Zuckerberg on Facebook is copying it for Facebook. Why wouldn't TVNZ want to engage with their viewership and with New Zealanders? That's the real question that we need to ask. Not why have you gone off X? Why won't you engage with us?
Okay, let's get into our first official topic for today. And I am really keen to hear your views on this because, like you said, you've been in Parliament for 15 years, and I think were you Minister of Internal Affairs for part of that time?
I was Minister of Local Government, which Internal Affairs was a part of. So Internal Affairs has something like 14 or 15 ministers to look after. Why? It's the oldest government department, I think.
Yeah.
And anything that you don't know where to put, you stick in Internal Affairs. So the poor chief executive actually has 14, 15, 16 ministers to talk to.
Wow. Okay, well, the government has in its sights charities. It reckons that there is $2 billion in untaxed profits, and 30% of registered charities have some sort of trading activities, whether it's a cafe running a preschool off the side, or maybe they've got a car park, like a very liberal church in Auckland Central, making great money from it. So they would be pinged by this as well. And they they've also, I don't know if you saw, Rodney, today in the newspaper, they were talking about Inland Revenue looking at the interpretation of laws and whether subscriptions and member transactions might be caught as income. So there is a real laser focus on charities, and it seems to be ignoring the dollar benefit of what charities do with the food banks and working with people, the social good that they do. So from your perspective, having been in Parliament, why is the government suddenly focusing on charities as a solution to overspending of a government?
Because government hates competition. And it hates competition because it always shows it up. This is a very deep attack on our society and the foundation of our society. It's nothing to do with the money. It's nothing to do with fairness. We've learned in the past few years that what government says and the reason it gives for doing what it's doing is never the actual reason. When they say, oh, we're doing this for your own safety, or we're doing this for your own good, or we're doing this to be kind, be very scared, because government has its own incredible momentum and it doesn't want to tell you the real reason. So everything is fake about this, and it goes like this. Government down through the years has destroyed every institution which has people looking after people. It's destroyed the church, it's destroyed the private schools, it's destroyed the independent schools, it's destroyed the friendly societies, and it's destroyed the family. Because power and those pushing for the power, the system itself, not just a current crop of politicians, not just even the current crop of bureaucrats, they want power, and to have total power, they want society to be reduced to a band of individuals on their own, dependent only upon the state. You can see that because you'd say, what would be the problem with having just a few independent schools? Right? Like, how's that going to hurt anyone? They can't allow it. They have to have the monopoly. Why? Because those independent schools will show up the state monopoly. We have this useless, monolithic welfare system that drains our treasure and destroys families and destroys lives and does little good. It was presented to us under the rubric of caring for people. We know it doesn't care for people, you're just a number. And we know that it'll pay young girls to have babies and not care for themselves, young men to live dissolute lives and not care for them. And then there's charities that by their nature care for people and do the job, because if they don't do the job, they won't be paid. The system of government hates it, and so they will always want to destroy it. They hate the churches. They hate food banks. They hate it. In fact, food banks are seen as a failure of the system, when I think you, like me, will see that as a wonderful thing. People actually helping others. So that's what that is. But there's also another sinister thing that's happened, which a few years ago you wouldn't have believed, even the definition of a charity has become weaponized and politicized. And Family First was the first to reveal that. That was truly shocking to me, where you actually had a political campaign to decide who could be a charity and who couldn't be a charity. And that was done by the enemies of those who believe that a family is the foundation of any decent society and we should do everything in our power to support it, including from the government.
Yeah.
So they pushed and pushed and pushed, and the courts went along with it because the courts too have been caught up in this. And now what happens? Well, Destiny Church stands up, makes a stand. The leftist alphabet soup, word salad, mad people kick up a fuss. Our weak-kneed Prime Minister says, oh, yes, maybe we should be looking at Destiny Church, whether they should be a charity. Greenpeace is fine. Rainbow Youth is fine. Inside Out is fine. Inside Out going around telling my 10-year-old girl that, she should think about being a boy. They can have charitable status, but a church can't. Family First can't. It is disgusting. And so we've got a big problem. We have a big problem, and we should be supporting the charities at every opportunity. Why? Because they're like Edmund Burke's little platoons that are out there making our society strong, and our government wants to destroy them.
Actually, you make a very good point because Rainbow Youth are currently benefiting from the fact that when you go to Woolworths, any Woolworths store around New Zealand, a lot of people have been contacting me moaning about this, is that when you get your change, you can top up the price of what you've paid to make a donation to Rainbow Youth. And a lot of people are
No
annoyed with
way.
that, yeah. So,
well, I've just got reason number 101 to stay with Pack and Save.
Well, the interesting thing, I was just thinking this through, Rodney, is that if they start taxing charities, that means that all that income that is being donated to Rainbow Youth is going to be taxable. This is where I don't think the people who don't like charities or don't like churches haven't thought this through, because it's also going to target Greenpeace, who may do a fundraiser. Although Rosie commented here, she says, I'm involved with a charity that raises money to fund research into finding a cure for spinal cord injuries and getting people out of wheelchairs and walking again. Well, that's exactly it. If you run a bake sale or if you have a kind of income stream that helps you do that research, that's going to be accessible as income. The fact of the matter is, I mean, they always raise the sanitarium one. I mean, the left-wing spin-off, they always say, oh, look, this is about targeting mega churches and sanitarium. But the fact of the matter is...
Yeah, it's a well-known campaign.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's keep moving. We've got lots of topics. The second one is, Cabinet Minister resigned, and this was Andrew Bailey. This is why he resigned.
I've made the personal choice to resign as a minister, and I've offered my resignation to the Prime Minister, which he has accepted.
What actually happened?
Just as I stated, it was an animated discussion.
What does that mean? What's an animated discussion?
Lively. I touched their upper arm, and it's obviously a matter that's inappropriate, and that's why I've made the personal decision to step down as a minister.
You touched it with force? Or
No.
So it wasn't a grab?
I held their arm.
How long for?
Sorry?
Was there a complaint made?
There has been a complaint made.
Okay, so Cabinet Minister resigns. Now, I want to come back to you, Rodney, and ask whether you thought he should have resigned because of this, or whether he should have been sacked. Now, there is an interview doing the rounds, which we've had a little laugh about, Rodney, prior to this, and it's where Christopher Luxon is before McCoskrie from News Talk ZB, and he simply asked, if Bailey hadn't resigned, would you have sacked him? Simple question. See if you can hear the either yes or no.
Have sacked him if he hadn't offered to resign?
Well, hypothetical, he did resign.
No, I know that, but just answer the question.
well-
Would you have sacked
Well,
him?
he didn't meet the expectations of a minister.
So was it a sackable offence?
Well, I think given how clear we'd been on the first incident about what
Why
the
can't you
expectation...
just answer the question?
Well,
See, this is why you get yourself reputationally in so much trouble. Would you have sacked him? Yes or no?
I can say he didn't meet the expectations I have of ministers.
So you would have sacked him?
I didn't need to because he resigned.
See what you're doing here? I don't...
Well, no, but you're talking about a specific case, right?
Yeah,
Which is,
what- did
which
you-
is, this is,
would you have said, look,
have I
put-
done a
put-
good
put-
job of
put-
laying down expectations of my ministers?
Yeah, but
yes, crystal clear.
but the next step is really simple. If he hadn't, I'm glad he offered to resign, because I tell you what, if he didn't, I would have sacked him.
He wouldn't have met my expectations as a minister.
Why
Yep.
are you saying it that way? I don't understand.
Well, that's what I mean. If he hadn't resigned, I
Oh my gosh, it just went on for about 2.5 minutes. Let me just show you the very end of it. He still tries to get the yes or no.
Would have sacked him.
in this case
Or not.
he resigned.
I know
if that hadn't happened, I would have then been involved with that and would have made a decision to say that he didn't meet my expectations, and that would have
Which
meant
would
that
have led to what?
it would have led to him losing the role anyway.
So he would have been...
He would have been demoted
Sacked.
Demoted.
The ministry would have been taken away.
Right, sacked.
Yeah. Well, you can call it
Mate,
sacked.
you've made a complete meal of this.
Why can't Christopher Luxon say the word sack, Rodney?
Look, it's gobsmacking. I'm actually surprised he's still Prime Minister. Like, that would be a question that you would immediately expect. Even if it caught you off guard, you'd just say yes. What's there to lose? There's no downside to just saying, yes, I would have sacked them. But he can't say it. This is a trivial question
Yeah.
for a yes or no answer. It could be more complicated because what he resigned for seems farcical, because he touched someone on the arm. We've had no explanation for what happened, and I wouldn't resign because I touched someone on the arm, even if afterwards I felt I shouldn't have, because I would apologise and say, look, I'm very sorry. It was a bit of a robust debate, and I just pulled you to have one more word or whatever, right? Didn't hit them in the face. The person's made a complaint, so there's going to be an investigation. So the Prime Minister could simply have said, well, I don't know the details. He's decided to resign. If he hadn't resigned, I would have stood him down until the results of the investigation were available, and then I would have decided to sack him or not. What's hard about any of that? The man is totally incapable of running the country. He's incapable of making a decision. He's incapable of answering a question. I'm sure he's a lovely guy. I'm sure he's a very good manager. But if you can't answer a simple question like that, and of course, how sharp is it when you get to compare him now to the leadership that the United States is offering, where we're dealing with every day the potential for war and ending war? You ask Donald Trump a question, you get an answer. You ask J.D. Vance a question, you get an answer. You ask his press secretary a question, you get an answer. And these are consequential matters of international politics, war and peace. Our Prime Minister gets asked, oh, that guy, that minister of yours, that he resigned, would you have sacked him anyway? He can't answer that. Useless.
Okay, let's keep going. There's been
Have I clear about that?
Sorry?
Was I clear about what I think?
Very clear, thank you very much. And you also clarified whether Bailey should have resigned. I thought it was quite a bit of heat around it as well. Let's keep going though. Citizens arrest. They've introduced a law. I never realised this, that if you tried to stop someone who was stealing goods leaving a supermarket, that you weren't actually protected in law. And apparently you can, but it was only between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. or some farcical thing. So they're going to change the law that there is some protection, but you've still got to ring the police once you've done it. You can use reasonable restraint which, Rodney, I find quite ironic, because remember the anti-smacking law that said,
Indeed.
well, what's reasonable? And we can't risk that, and you can't restrain people. That's against the law. That's assault. But suddenly we've realised that maybe reasonable restraint and reasonable correction of people is actually acceptable. Anyway, the Police Association don't like it. The Employers and Manufacturers Associations don't seem to like it. You've actually had an experience with a citizen's arrest, haven't you?
Yeah, I tackled a shoplifter 5 or so years ago and held him. And the way it played out was this. So I was 65 or something and not in great shape. But I was coming out of my supermarket in Christchurch and in Barrington Street. And an elderly woman was asking this rather big man, he's bigger than me, if she could look in his bag. And he just kept moving towards the door. And she asked repeatedly, and I went over to him and said, the lady wants to look in your bag, you need to let her look. And then he started to move quite quickly. I wasn't thinking. Like, seriously, I did not think, because it's your maleness and how you've been brought up.
Natural instinct.
So I followed him. He started to run down Barrington Mall, and I started to run after him. And then I thought, oh, this is tough, because what am I going to do if I did catch him? And then I saw there's these revolving glass doors. And I thought, oh, that's great, because he's got to get out through those. And when I get there, I'll do a flying dive on him and push him against the wall. And as I was running, everyone was watching me, and he was running faster and faster. I thought I better make sure he goes down, because he's a big fellow. I don't want him to come at me. So I hit him pretty hard, and he crumpled like a sack of spuds. And I was on top of him with his sports bag. The young supermarket staff caught me out. They said, let him go. They got all the meat, $200 or $300 of meat, they told me later, and I left. And then when I was back in the supermarket next week, it became quite a thing, because every time I went to that supermarket, staff would come, oh, you're the guy that, yeah. And they said they were told to let them walk out because they would be done for assault. I could have been done for assault. And indeed, there's a whole lot of problems about health, work and safety, that the policy is not to do anything that might get you hurt. I hate this stuff. I don't like calling on common sense, because common sense is one person's common sense is another person's madness. But I'm a big believer in this case in just some common sense. If someone's stealing from a shop and I see them, I'm going to drop them. I'll grab a weapon and hit them over the head and drop them if I'm sure that they're stealing. I don't care. You've got to stand up for people's lives and their property, and we've got to stop it. The police can't do it all on their own. I also believe there's another policy that should apply. I should have all the powers that the police have, and the police should have no more power than I have. So yes, I should be able to make an arrest. I should be able to detain someone, and then we'll decide the law. Who was in the wrong, who was in the right. It shouldn't be de facto that I'm in the wrong just because I used more force than that person was doing on me. If this fellow was stealing and I did what was necessary to stop him, I should be totally in the clear, even though I could have broken something of his. Why? Because the force was appropriate to the thief. If we lived like that, the scumbags, who are always in a minority, would be knocked back in their place. We know that if you call the police, they're not coming. So yes, there should not be just more than a citizen's arrest. There should be a citizen's right to protect life and property and to use the force necessary to do so. If that word went out, oh my goodness, people would buck up their ideas. And we'll be men, not sort of little girly boys too scared to do anything.
Yeah, I mean, even security guards are not protected if they use some form of restraint. I remember when we were in the UK 2 Christmases ago, my wife talked to one of the security guards at the supermarkets in London and said, oh, in New Zealand, you're not allowed to physically stop someone who's leaving with stolen goods. They couldn't believe that that was the case. they said, "Oh no, we will definitely deal with that." And
Some
stop
years
that
ago,
offender.
Bob, some years ago, I was waiting outside a minister's office in the British Houses of Parliament and got chatting to a very, very serious security guard who had a very serious set of weapons with him. And they knew I was a visiting politician from New Zealand. And I said, "Excuse me." And we got chatting. And I said, "Is that thing loaded?" He says, "It's loaded. It's got one, it's ready to go." And I said, "Really?" Because, you get a bit of a fright when there's a serious soldier there ready to go.
Mm.
And I said, "When are you allowed to point it and pull the trigger?" He says, "Whenever I think it's necessary."
Yep.
I tell you what, I sat there straight and upright and didn't make any sudden movements. But that's what it takes, right?
Yep.
He can't be sitting there second guessing because a terrorist doesn't give you much time.
No.
And I like that. I like that. I want to live in to live in a free country. It's not enough that I can call the police. To live in a free country, I've got to have the ability and the means to defend myself and my property and to defend my family, to defend neighbours and to defend members of the public. Absolutely. Police associations, of course, they're against it. It's the same thing as the charities. They hate the competition.
Yeah, that was one of my arguments with the three strikes law, is that actually offenders are very good gamblers. They figure out their chances of getting away with what they're going to do. And at the moment, going into a supermarket store, filling your trolley with stuff and then busting through the checkout, you've got very good chances of getting away and nobody's going to touch you and nobody's going to stop you. So they know exactly what they're doing. Rodney, you would have been in Parliament because one of my other good mates is Garth McVicker, who set up the Sensible Sentencing Trust, and that would have been around the time that you were in Parliament. And of course, that was based on not citizens' arrest, but self-defence when you're on a farm and you've got people coming in and attacking your goods. How much can you defend yourself? So you would have been in Parliament during that debate, wouldn't you?
Of course. And of course, you should be able to, I believe in the castle doctrine. And in fact, if someone's on your property and you feel scared, I don't think there is even a case for reasonable force. Because if you're a woman alone and there's a man and they're on your property, I don't think you should be second guessing whether you can shoot them or not. I don't think we would shoot someone lightly, but if you're scared, right, you're going to go out there with a gun. You're going to say, "What are you up to?" And you shouldn't be sitting there and thinking, "I might get into trouble if they come running at you." You should be able to shoot them. I believe that implicitly. That's what it takes to defend ourselves. And these politicians that are making these laws aren't confronting these situations. They're not living next door to a gang. They're not living isolated, miles and miles away from a police department. And it's disgusting to me that our prime ministers and our ministers have security, often armed, if need be, not us. And they won't allow it to us. That's why I'm against, the gun control. We should be able to have guns.
Okay, next topic is the letter that was sent to medical professionals. It was sent by a group called Inflection Point, which is a group that is against chemicalisation and castration of confused children, the puberty blockers, the cross-sex hormones. So a legal firm sent a letter to medical professionals saying, hey, you could be breaking the law and you need to tread very carefully. Well, that's got the activists in an uproar. It's got some other lawyers in an uproar. But I know you're very strong on this issue. You've spoken up fantastically. I know you were down at your local school also campaigning against the indoctrination that confuses these kids. This whole issue just fascinates me, that the medical profession are not willing to stand up, and it seems like they've really been badgered into a position and they're scared of the media, they're scared of the activists, even though the Health New Zealand says that puberty blockers, there's no proof that it's effective or that it's safe, and yet they're still prescribing it. So what's your take on this, and what do you think of a legal firm? It's Stephen Franks, who was actually, he was an ACT MP with you, wasn't he, Rodney?
Indeed.
Yeah.
No, I'm well.
So,
Well, two
and
things.
he's been targeted personally as well.
First up, of course you should be able to send a letter like that. And actually it was quite wise to do it through a law firm. So they did it in a proper way, would have crossed the T's and dotted the I's. But what are we supposed to do? In fact, this is the mildest thing I could imagine doing. We've got doctors and so-called health professionals who are castrating and sterilising people that are underage, that are giving them drugs that are going to give them lifetime ill health effects, all based on a lie. And the lie is that they could be born in the wrong body. And the lie is that by giving you chemicals and using surgery, we can convert you from a boy to a girl, or from a girl to a boy. Two lies in a heartbeat, sterilising them, chemically treating them, underage. This is disgusting. Bad enough if they had some mental issues and they were adults. These are kids that are doing it to it. Don't get off the hook that the parents have been mad enough to do this, or, sadly, been misled, bullied, harassed. Had a friend, oh, your son will die unless we treat him like this. He'll kill himself. Let us treat him. All they did was send a letter saying, you are open to serious legal consequence down the track. Now, I was pleased to learn that because, as you know, in New Zealand, we don't have tort for personal injury, or not much of a tort for personal injury because of ACC. I thought that letter was great. And you know what occurred to me, Bob? Oh, I must contact my old colleague, Stephen Franks, and ask him, could you send a letter to my school and say that if you start grooming my daughter underage, there could be legal consequences? Because I fail to understand how, if I started teaching a 13-year-old girl how to give consent and practice depraved sex, that I wouldn't be arrested. And yet, if I'm a school teacher, I can do that to a girl in my class without the parents even knowing. I'd love to have Stephen Franks look at that and send every school principal and board chair in the country a letter. Oh my goodness, he's famous now, he may as well stick at it.
Yeah, and we would love to find someone who feels that they were groomed at school, were
Yes.
pushed off for gender affirmation treatment without their parents knowing, perhaps went through puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and has seen the light now and realises, hey, they were exploited by the school. We would love to find a person like that, because that could create the impetus for a case. And you're right, Rodney, school boards should be very wary about allowing groups like Inside Out and family planning, which is now called some other name because family planning has such negative connotations for that organisation. But to allow those groups in and to allow that kind of indoctrination, the consequences, school boards will ultimately be responsible and could be sued. So it's an interesting perspective. Ricky says, please, Rodney, I say thank you, mate, for standing up at your school. And Joe says, as parents, grandparents, and community members, we have to stand up against the trans movement on our children. And Catherine says, Bob, talk about those sex ed videos again and where you can find them. Well, we don't want you to watch the sex ed videos, but if you go to sexeducation.nz, you will see our analysis of what's being taught to kids, sexeducation.nz, and if you go to parentguide.nz, you'll see our parent guide on how to tackle schools in a constructive way, just like Rodney did. Although, Rodney, you weren't actually allowed in before the Board of Trustees, were you? You just wanted to read a letter and they actually blocked you, didn't they?
It took me 9 months to get 10 minutes in front of the board at Wakatipu High School. They're very nice people, lovely school. My daughter loves the school, so I've got nothing against the school. I don't want them teaching my daughter how to give consent and have sex at 13. It's just wrong. So I pulled her out, and then I said, look, it's up to the board to decide the stuff. The board have no clue, of course. They don't run the school. They think they do. And I wanted 10 minutes, and it took me 9 months. And when I got in front of the board, I wanted to record it because I wanted parents to know. And they wouldn't. Now, it's very clear in terms of the rules of a board meeting that I could record it. I could go and then film the whole board meeting unless it was in private, if I wanted to, as a private citizen. So I refused and instead gave my speech outside. I put it up on Let Kids Be Kids. You've linked to it. It's had 70,000 views or something. So it's a lot more than the dozen that were in the meeting. We're going to stop it, Bob. We're going to stop it. You and I and all the parents listening, all the people up and down, we're going to stop it. And we're going to be helped in stopping it, funnily enough, because what I hadn't appreciated, nor had you, I believe, but now is becoming apparent, is that USAID, a $50 billion project operated by the poor US taxpayer, has been sprinkling money around and for very little dollars, leveraging huge power among these minority wacko groups to destroy society. And of course, with USAID being dried up by the great and fabulous Donald Trump, I think we'll see not just our journalists whining that they're not getting paid, but we'll see these activists and these protesters no longer having the financial support they've enjoyed in the past. I love it.
Yep. Okay, we've got time for one more topic, so I just want to wind you up a little bit. There's a article that has been posted in the UK's Political Quarterly, which apparently is doing a feature on Social Democrat or Labour parties in office. And there is a paper just been published by Dr. Grant Duncan from New Zealand, and he basically traces the legacy of Jacinda Ardern's government from 2017 up to the peak of 2020, when she got a majority government despite MMP, and then to the utter collapse within 2 years of that. Now, he reckons that the government failed and Jacinda Ardern legacy failed at the end of those 5 years when she resigned. He says 4 factors. 1, economic, the post-lockdown inflation and the ongoing housing crisis, including the Kiwi Build fiasco. COVID-19 measures, failed policies, for example, 3 Waters, and constitutional administrative changes that lacked public consent, whatever that means. So of those 4 factors, do you think those were the key 4 factors?
I don't know, but I got a very clear view of what I think it was, and I don't know. But I think it was because they promised big and never delivered. It was all wishy-washy, feel good, be kind, eliminate child poverty. On every measure, things got worse. On every measure. They were appalling government, the worst of my lifetime, possibly the worst in our history. But then the big one for me was, so I hated it. I hated every minute of it. And but the big one was for me, they got back in with the majority by lying because they scared the population about just how bad COVID was. Now, one day there may be a virus that's bad, but this one wasn't it. But they scared people witless. Of course, it was happening around the world, but Jacinda and her government seemed to revel in it. People got scared. We all know who they were. They would do everything to try and save society and Nana. And they thought she was doing a great job, and they voted her back in. Well, history will record, bit by bit, person by person, that it was a total lie. It was fabricated. Question mark is whether Jacinda knew it was a lie. or whether she just went along. And I think what was happening post-COVID was people one by one were waking up. We're still not allowed to report the extent of the lies that were told because the media is still in Jacinda land. It's La La land. She was a terrible prime minister. Absolutely shocking. And I knew her. I knew her when she was a first-time MP. I just can't believe she turned into that beast that did such a lot of damage. And I mean, there's a whole lot of little things. The snarliness, the nastiness, the division that has occurred because of her, the economic hardship that occurred, the idea that you would have destroy people's careers and businesses because they wouldn't take an experimental medication. That is unbelievable to me. And I don't agree with abortion, but okay, governments do. But 9 months, they're aborting babies. She had a baby, and she still thought it should be up. You should be able to abort a 9-month baby. And you and I know, Bob, that because of that, babies are being aborted in New Zealand hospitals, but born alive, and are left wrapped in a blanket to die.
Yep,
David
and some
Seymour's-
people will
David
say,
Seymour-
no, surely
David
that can't be
Seymour-
true, but we've seen the policy, it's in writing through OIAs. We've seen that as the
Absolutely
policy.
in writing. David
Yeah.
Seymour agrees with that. Terrible.
Mm.
But what young mother would agree with that?
Mm.
I just don't. There's
Yeah,
a
I
lot
think-
wrong with that lady.
I think that the abortion law was certainly a key one. This paper says that it was the vaccine mandates, the MIQ bookings, so not letting citizens back into the country, and the prolonged lockdown. I don't know if you saw, but there was a immunologist in the United States who was part of the Biden administration and was pushing the vaccine, who was actually just come out recently and admitted that herd immunity was put up as a reasonable solution to all this, but they just pushed it aside and said, no, let's just continue with the vaccine mandate. So it certainly developed a huge level of trust. Look, the comments are going off the rocker right now because we're talking about the legacy, and we have run out of time. And so, Rodney, it has been an absolute pleasure having the last 54 minutes with you. You have done a great
my
job.
pleasure.
I will tell Simon that, when he retires, I have my replacement in place. And thank you for being available, and look forward to you being on Straight Talk for your next roster.
Well, thank you, Bob, for the opportunity. Thank you for building your platform. And thank you to all your viewers and listeners, because it's your viewers and listeners that are going to form the fight back and the core of, once again, making our society something that we can be proud of. And we can be very proud of what you've done, and we can be very proud of being a part of it. And I'm very, very excited about what's going to be achieved coming into the future. Thank you, Bob.
All good. Thank you, Rodney, and thank you for watching. We will be back next Thursday night, and in fact, we have another guest panelist while Simon is overseas. And, he's a good mate of ours, Rodney. It's Peter Williams.
Yes.
He's going to be our guest panelist next week. So until then, have a great week. Thanks for watching.